Hello everybody and welcome to this week's episode of Advice Lounge. I'm Kelsey Sanders.
And I am Kevin Andrews. Now every week we take randomly submitted emails submitted by you guys, our members, and try to give you advice on anything and everything you can possibly imagine.
That's right. Now some of the topics may be considered a little bit mature, but teens today are faced with these situations and we just want to provide a place where they can feel safe about getting good advice from their peers.
Yeah, so we took some emails from the younger teens as well as some emails from the older teens and tried to cover all of our bases this week.
All right, well, our first question today comes from Girl Sports 9, and she writes, how do I know when I'm ready to date? Okay, well, there's some things to consider here. Number one would be, what is your definition of dating? Is it just spending time alone with that person, or is it getting involved in sexual relations? Only you can decide when you're ready to take each step in the dating process. And a lot of times, teens turn to their peers to see what they should be doing when they really should just look to themselves to determine when they're ready to take each step. Now, there's no right or wrong in this, but just make sure that whatever you decide to be safe. And also keep the communications clear between the person you're dating and yourself. And if they're not willing to respect your boundaries, then that person you're dating just isn't the right person for you.
Now this is a great follow-up question to that first question. And it's from Thunder1992, and they asked, how do I tell if somebody likes me? Well, a great way to tell if somebody likes you is if they enjoy spending time with you, and then the amount of time that they enjoy spending with you seems to be more and more. Now you really need to be sure to analyze if you have those same feelings for them as well. You need to be sure about those feelings and then be sure to communicate that directly to them so you can decide where this relationship might be headed. Now, one of the biggest pitfalls of the early part of a relationship is when you're trying to communicate through somebody else. Whisper down the lane can cause a lot of mixed up messages, so you have to be really careful about that.
All right, our next question comes from LL Mendoza, and they write, what are some ways to handle fights with friends? Okay, well, when you're in a fight with a friend, the best way to get this all handled is just to be open and honest with them about your feelings. Just sit down and talk to them and explain why you're upset and what caused your feelings to be hurt. Now, be sure to tell them how much you value their friendship and what they can do to keep from hurting you again in the future. Now, one thing you do need to keep in mind is that you're not always going to agree about everything with all your friends. So the best thing to do is just to learn to agree to disagree to avoid fights in the future.
Now, Anonymous wrote in and asked, how do I get my parents to adjust the rules now that I'm older? Well, sitting down with your parents and having a heart-to-heart talk is a great place to start. Now, a really good idea to prepare for this chat is to sit down and think about your current rules and responsibilities and think about what you might possibly like to see changed in the future. Now, be realistic. I mean, if you've been respectful of the current household rules and responsibilities and have realistic expectations of what you'd like to see happen, then your parents are going to be more than willing to hear what you have to say, and hopefully you can agree on something that you'd like to have changed.
Now, most of our emails come from teens needing advice, but this next one is great because it's actually about giving back. Okay, it comes from Becky Blue, and she writes, how do I find or get involved with organizations that may need my help? Well, there are many organizations out there that would love to have a volunteer. But before you decide to volunteer time, sit down and think about what issues matter most to you and also decide how much time you have on your hands to actually volunteer. That way, not only will the organization have a great committed volunteer, but you'll feel great about contributing to a cause that means a lot to you. So talk to a guidance counselor at your school, or talk to a teacher or your parents, and even go online to search causes and issues that may matter to you. And once you decide on a cause, make the call. You'll be glad you did.
Now, Hogwarts5 writes, what are some ways to make new friends? Now, I can understand just how challenging and scary it is to go out and meet new people, but there are definitely some things you can do to make it a lot easier on yourself. Think of some activities that you enjoy doing. Maybe it's signing up for an art class, maybe it's joining an exercise class, or maybe it's something simple like going on a hike. And when you're doing activities that you enjoy, you're much more likely to meet like-minded people. And a lot of friendships can form when you're doing something that you enjoy doing, and you're doing it with people who enjoy doing the same things. Now, a way to make it easier on yourself and meet more people is by doing a variety of activities. That way you have a lot more chances to meet people that you can enjoy.
Our next email comes from Honda Mike, and he writes, a kid I know at school talks about suicide. He seems serious, but maybe he just wants attention. How do I handle this? This is definitely not a matter to be taken lightly, and you won't have a second chance if he is serious. If you're his friend, then I would encourage him to talk to his parents and school counselor. If you're truly concerned for his safety, then I would talk to his parents for him if he refuses to. Now, I know the worst thing in the world would be to have him mad at you, but at least he would still be alive.
Oftentimes, teenagers voice suicidal thoughts because of the complete, overwhelming feelings that they're having at that moment. And he might see suicide as a solution to all of his problems. Now, this is a fatal, tragic, and completely irreversible decision. Now, if he's using this just to try and get attention, and this is the way that he's trying to do it, he is obviously in need of some psychological help, and that's even more of a reason to go talk to his parents about it. And this is Kevin Andrews.
And Kelsey Sanders for Advice Lounge. Now remember to keep your emails coming, and maybe your question will be featured on the next episode.
And remember, use your head. Every choice has a consequence.
Be smart.